So, you guys are actually in for a really special treat today because I am sitting with Briana Felsen, who is board member extraordinaire of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. I mean, look, the reason why I'm saying that is because Briana joined our board, I think March-ish of last year of 2024. And Briana's job, which she'll tell you about in 5 seconds, Briana's job is she is a development professional, and I'm forgetting her exact title, but she'll again tell you about that in 5 seconds. She's a development professional for, oh God, I want to say APAC. Did I get that right? Okay, phew. Okay, phew. Um, for APAC, and she, even though we have an incredible development staff member, Sammy Cutler, Briana has really helped us in a tremendous number of ways since coming on the board and helped revolutionize lots of things behind the scenes from a development standpoint. So now with that introduction, but like, why are we here? We're here because, many of the board members, not all of them, but many of our board members have fertility stories. And I knew Briana had a story, and she's been very open with me and very open with lots of different people. But she approached me a few weeks ago, maybe it was even more than that, and said, actually, here's a piece that you may not have known, and I think it's relevant for this time of year, and I really want to talk about it. And I was just overwhelmed with gratitude, and I'm actually going to stop talking now. So, and introduce you to Briana. Briana, say hi. Tell people who you are. Give people a little bit about your background. Like, just tell people who you are.
Hi, I'm Briana. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I think you give me a lot more credit than I deserve, but I will take it.
Take it all. Take
Um,
it all.
I will also say that, so as you heard, I'm a development professional. So I am a professional talker, but I've actually never been on a podcast. So this is very exciting for me. Um, I just said, that's okay. I'm a professional talker. I'll just go with it.
We don't edit out the ums. We just keep going. So go ahead.
So a little bit about myself. I am 31 years old. My husband and I live in Potomac, Maryland, so right outside of Washington, D.C. We have been married for, oh my God, since March of 2022. So that's got to be 3 years about. Yeah, that's three years. And I'm born and raised in this area. My husband is from Staten Island, New York. And I got really fortunate to find a New Yorker that wanted to marry someone from out of town and leave New York. So that's like a little bit about me. Oh, like Amy said, I am a development professional for APAC. My title is the Greater Washington Area Director, but that doesn't really mean anything. I work with donors in the Greater Washington area, bring new people into APAC, keep people connected, solicit gifts, bring them in politically, really like everything APAC in the Greater Washington area. I touch. I'm very fortunate to have that role, and I'm very, very fortunate to be a board member of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. It's incredibly meaningful work that I feel really lucky to do. So as Amy said, I kind of approached her, and we'll get into this. But this time of year, I feel is very, my own fertility story is really connected to it. Um, my husband and I did IVF for genetic reasons, and a lot of our fertility story is connected to this time of year and Jewish holidays in general. And we'll get into that, but it felt really um, important to do this now.
I, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I, you know, you have always been, as I said before in your introduction, you have been open about your fertility story, but I had no idea that you were doing IVF for genetic reasons. I just knew you were doing IVF, and I assumed, I mean, wrongly so, I assumed it was because you guys just had primary infertility. So take us back, and also, like, in a little bit of that backstory, can you also share just with people where you see yourselves in the Jewish, like
Yeah.
where you affiliate in the Jewish world as well?
My husband and I live in a beautiful modern Orthodox community in Potomac. It's actually the community that I grew up in. So my parents live here. A lot of my childhood friends live here. It's really, it's really a special place. And yeah. Oh, and I didn't mention we also have a dog who we love named Skipper. Uh, so it's, I'll say that probably we would have, regardless of having to do IVF for genetic reasons. So let me just say that I am a carrier of BRCA1. For those people that don't know, it's a breast cancer. It's the breast cancer gene, and it's also connected to ovarian cancer as well as breast cancer. Um, I also have PCOS, and I basically found out all of this um, and to build a family, and it wasn't happening. I wouldn't say that we were trying.
Brianna, say that part again because you just cut out for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah. I said
Found all that out when?
we're trying to build a family, and it wasn't happening. We were not trying for years and years and years. I mean, we've only been married for 3 years, so um, but it was getting frustrating, and I had an appointment with my OB, and actually, I said to her, I think that I might have PCOS. I was reading about it online. I'd really like you to test me for it. Um, because I wasn't on any form of birth control. It was like the first time that I was like really seeing what my body was doing. Um, so she tested me. We had done genetic testing, like the garden variety of genetic testing, all good. I have a history of BRCA in my family. My mom carries the BRCA gene. When she was 32, she had breast cancer. I was 5 and my brother was 3.
Oh my
Um,
God.
she has 2 aunts who both ultimately passed away, one from breast cancer, one beat breast cancer, and then ultimately passed from ovarian cancer. And
Oh,
her father had cancer. Um, at that time, we didn't know BRCA wasn't a thing. I mean, it obviously existed, but the diagnosis of the gene of BRCA wasn't a thing. And when my mom was diagnosed, it also really wasn't a thing. So only afterwards, after talking to the doctors, after she beat the cancer and talking about family history, she then got diagnosed. She got tested and found out that she had the BRCA gene. And then because of that, a bunch of her cousins and my grandfather and all these people got tested, and a bunch of people in my family have it. So there was kind of always like a little part of me that just like assumed that I was going to have the BRCA gene. Um, so take a step back. I go to the OB. I say, I think I have PCOS. And she says, okay, we're going to test you. And she says, I also know that you have a family history of breast cancer in your family. Would you like to test for that? And I did not think I was going to have this response. I said, no. I was too scared.
oh.
I was not ready. I was like, I'll do it another time. So I actually didn't get tested. I was talking to a friend and she said to me, you really need to get tested. Like, I'll come with you, I'll hold your hand, like, I'll do whatever you want, but you really should get tested. So I was really brave and I called a week later and I called the doctor and I said, I'm going to come in for a blood test for the BRCA gene because cancer screenings are not part of the regular 273 genetic things that they test for um, when you're doing genetic testing to try and build your family. So it's an additional blood draw. So I go and I get tested. A few weeks later, at the beginning of the week, I get a call from my OB that I did have PCOS. She says, okay, you have PCOS. I obviously freak out, even though I'm the one who asked her to test me for it. Um, she was like, but, we have this whole conversation. And she says, there are many things you can do. You don't need to jump right into IVF. We can give you letrozole or Clomid, and I can monitor you in the office and we'll check your blood and you basically can do timed intercourse. And I had known people that had done that. So it kind of like I was able to breathe and I was like, okay, fine. Like there are
Can
worse
I can I
things.
can I just say for 5 seconds, the fact that you knew people that had done timed intercourse, the fact that's like that was already sort of part of your like comfort, so to speak, is actually a pretty amazing thing. Like I'm just sitting here like most people are not public about their stories, are not public about the fact, by the way, I need to go and like, tonight at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday, my husband and I, we have it,
We're
whatever.
busy. Yeah.
Like, we're busy. Yeah. I'm so grateful to all of your people who did that, who like
Yeah.
the more, as we know, right? The more we speak about things, the less taboo it is, the less guilty, the less shame, the less all the things. So sorry, I like the like
Oh,
educator
it's a really
and
good
like
point.
and community awareness person in me and this organization just had to say that. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm telling my friend about it who did not have to do timed intercourse. She had her own fertility story, but that's a story for another time. She said, "Oh, my sister-in-law is pregnant and they did timed intercourse. You should talk to her." So I had a phone call with my friend's sister-in-law. It really like helped me. Okay. So I'm like, let's say I'm like in a good place, all things considered. That's the beginning of the week. End of the week, I got a message in my portal from the OB saying, like, we need to set up a call. I'd like to do a telehealth appointment with you and your husband. I'm like, okay. So we set up a telehealth appointment and she says to me, the results came back and you have the BRCA1 gene. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, even though like I said before, like I knew, right? Like, but like it feels different to actually like hear it, which is like why I didn't want to get tested in the first place. Right. Like, on one hand, like I totally knew, like there was nothing shocking about her saying that. And at the same time, it was devastating, like bawling, hysterical, like couldn't breathe, was angry. Like my husband called my mom to come over because I was like inconsolable. Okay. And she comes over and obviously, like, she's been there, like, she has the gene, she had cancer. And she's reminding me, like, this is actually amazing that because there are so many things that you can do about it fertility wise, as well as, kind of deal with it so that you don't end up getting stage 3 breast cancer at 32 years old, right? Like, and this is all true and it's all logical. And yes, but like when you're in that moment, it's none of that feels good. You're just like, okay, I'm 29 years old and I have a 72 to 75, whatever percent likelihood of getting breast cancer. I'm just like a sitting duck, right? So then after that, I'm like, oh my God, children, blah, blah, blah. Because if you end up getting breast cancer, I mean, not 100%, but like if you have to get a lot of your organs removed. And if you have the cancer before you have children or finish having children, that kind of ends your story in probably the way that doesn't mean your story of building your family is over, but the way that you had envisioned it is probably over. And I hadn't even started yet. So I'm hysterical. The OB basically says these are two really well known fertility clinics in the area. I know that we talked about timed intercourse um, because of the PCOS, but I actually think that you should meet with the clinic to talk about IVF because you can actually test your embryos for the BRCA gene. One, should you decide that you actually don't want to get pregnant right now, which I did, um, you can make embryos and put them on ice, and you can do what you need to do and come back. Or you can test the embryos and not transfer any embryos with BRCA, ultimately ending the BRCA gene in my family. Um, that's what my husband and I decided to do. We met with, yeah, go
And
ahead.
can I also say another thing which she may have said or not said, but I'm just going to add here. The other benefit is that, you know, timed intercourse, while, you know, that's the way, the rest of us do it. But if that may not work because, if PCOS was the only diagnosis that you had, then, you could sort of take your time, but many people end up doing IVF, but they kind of wait and see and, oh, we'll try you on these sort of low intervention oral medicines, as you were saying before. And then, like, if you needed, let's say, give you 6 months, a year, or whatever, then you go. But here you're basically saying, like, let's fast track all of this and say, like, let's just get to a place where you're making embryos and fast track all of it. Because I think the other thing in the back of my mind as you were talking, and with so many other people that I speak to, is the ticking time bomb, right? It's what you said, the ticking time bomb of, I don't know if my fertility journey is going to end before I'm ready for it to end. So, like, let's make those embryos now, or at least as fast as possible. And the only way to do that is IVF.
So we met with, okay, so this was all in end of August, beginning of September. And as we know in the fertility world, it's a lot of hurry up and waiting. I had the first meeting with my doctor. I got off the phone with the OB, sobbing hysterically about the BRCA diagnosis, crying. I called the clinic and I was like, I just got a BRCA diagnosis and I need to make an appointment with a doctor. There should be a
Gosh.
referral. And
Gosh.
they're
Oh,
like,
gosh.
I was like, and I'm sorry that I'm crying. And they're like, it's okay. We get this all the time. And I was like, okay, okay. So whatever. I get it together. I make the appointment. The next appointment is October 23rd. Well, what happens between September 2023 and October 2023 is October 7th. So obviously that's devastating for everyone, right? For the Jewish community. I'm dealing with my own like grief and impending doom and all of that. October 7th happens. And I think a lot of people in the fertility space, something that like people meant so well when they said this, but like a rhetoric that was really painful was like, let's make more Jewish babies.
Oh my
And
God.
that was all I was hearing while I'm trying to like wait every day for this appointment with the reproductive endocrinologist, knowing that both I have PCOS and that like I'm a sitting duck for breast cancer and like IVF is a chance as having a baby. IVF does not equal baby, right?
Right.
So I'm just like, and as you mentioned, I work for APAC. So I was like very entrenched in October 7th and Israel and then the fertility space and BRCA and all of this stuff. So we go to my appointment October 23rd, 2023. My doctor is an amazing, really a mensch, incredible human being. Um, a Jewish guy from the area. I didn't know it at the time, but it turns out like small Jewish world. I actually went to camp with his daughter and whatever.
Of course you
But
did.
of course I did. Um, and he basically was like, okay, between the PCOS, but more importantly, the BRCA, like we're going to skip right to IVF. And I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yep.
But again, let's do it in the fertility world means let's do it in like 4 or 5 months from
Yep.
now. So
Yep.
you can sit with it and think about it for 4 or 5 months while you're also on birth control, which makes you want to pull your hair out and feel gross in your body and all of these things.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay. In that time, I did all of these like diagnostic testing. I did a saline sonogram and an HSG and all of these things that needed to get done, which is why it had to be a few months. Okay. So fast forward, we do my first egg retrieval. I'm like weirdly excited to give myself shots every night for 2 weeks. Like I literally cried getting shots until that point. Like I was 29 years old and still crying at shots. But like for once I was like, all right, let's just do this. Right. And my husband gives me the shots so that he can participate in everything. Um, and for people that don't know, you don't actually know when your egg retrieval is going to be. It basically depends on how your body responds to the meds. It's not abnormal that someone who has PCOS, it takes longer for their body to respond. And you typically have more follicles, which means you need a higher dose of meds to get those follicles to respond. So I'm on this like really high dose of meds and I'm excited because they're like, oh, you have like 28 follicles. That's amazing, blah, blah, blah. So like I'm feeling good and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the exception to the rule. I'm going to get 28 eggs. They're going to be amazing. I'm going to get embryos. I'm going to transfer. I'm going to get pregnant on the first time and we're going to have more to spare. Okay. Well, surprise, I'll skip to the end. That's not what happened. Um, in most clinics, as most people know, it's not necessarily your doctor that's doing your egg retrieval. It's whoever's on call. Okay. So I'm on these meds for longer than the average person, and it's getting closer and closer. I just want to make sure I'm getting the timeline right. Closer and closer to Purim. Okay. And, we have plans for Purim and we have my friend's daughter's first birthday party and like all of these things. So ends up having the egg retrieval Erev Purim, the day before Purim.
Yep.
And they put me under, and it's not my doctor doing it, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Like there's no one bad here. Like I have so many follicles, like it'll be great. I wake up and the first thing that they can tell you is how many eggs they got. And I'm like, how many eggs did I get? I turn to my husband and I see this look on his face. And the doctor comes in and she's like, we only got 6. And I want to preface by saying, when I say only got 6, there are some people that would love to get 6. And I say only got 6 because I was told that I had 28. If I was told from the start that I had 6 or 10 or whatever, like that would be a different situation. But it was like, I I was told that I had 28 follicles and part of it's my own fault. Like I built it up that this was going to be wildly successful. So I only get 6. The doctor says they only got 6 eggs from my left ovary. They couldn't get anything from the right because my right ovary was too high and she felt like she couldn't safely get it. So I'm like coming out of anesthesia and I'm like obviously bawling my eyes out because I just did all of this and I worked it up in my head. And then I'm like, oh my God, tomorrow's Purim. And then the day after, we have to go to the first birthday party. And I don't want to go to shul and see all of these people with their babies and their pregnancies and all of these things. It's like a mess. So I wait to see. And then I like convince myself, okay, well, 6 eggs could be 6 mature eggs. And I could get 6 embryos or 5 embryos or all these, right? And like 5 embryos would be amazing. 5 embryos, I could never have to do this again, right? Okay. Well, then I get a call that of the 6, 4 were mature. Okay. So already 2 are gone. Then I'm waiting and waiting, and then the week's over, and I get a call that only 2 went to blast. And again, I want to say only as in like in my scenario,
Yep.
it was devastating, but it's not actually a devastating number. Only 2 went to blast. Okay. Well, you would think, great, I have 2 embryos. That's amazing. But now they have to be sent for genetic testing, right? Because I have BRCA. So it takes a couple of weeks for once the clinic biopsies the eggs and sends it to a lab to test them for whatever it is you deem you need to test them for. I was testing it for BRCA and chromosomal abnormalities. Other people might test it for other things. I went to Israel for Pesach that year, 2023. I knew that like at some point, either right before or right after Pesach, I would probably get the results back. I didn't get them before Pesach. I'm on the plane and well, I guess technically it was before Pesach, but it wasn't before I got on the plane. I'm on the plane about to land in Israel and I get an email from the lab that my results are in. But planes have horrible service, like Wi-Fi. So I'm like clicking, 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 clicking. I finally open it and it says that I read first that neither embryo has BRCA, and I'm so excited, but both embryos are chromosomally abnormal and not compatible with life.
Oh,
Okay.
God. Oh,
So
Brianna.
I'm sitting on this full airplane on the way to Israel. My husband on one side, a stranger on the other. I just start bawling, like hysterical, but I'm like trying to do it quietly so that I'm not disturbing the people around me, but I just like can't keep it in. M- My husband ends up getting my parents because they were sitting in a different part of the plane, and they come to where we are, and obviously they're deeply distressed for me, and we get off the plane, and all I wanted to do was get on another plane and go home. The thought of like being anywhere that wasn't my bed after what was already traumatic between the botched egg retrieval and all these things was like the worst possible thing that I felt could have happened to me. I I literally was crying in Ben Gurion, like I couldn't walk. Um so that brings us to Purim, that brings us to Pesach. I'm in Israel, it's Pesach. I just found out that we don't have any um embryos and we got to start over. I end up having a telehealth appointment with my doctor and, we make a plan for the next round, but like I'm not okay. Mm. I end up go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, how were the people around you at that point? And were they what were they comforting? Were they I
Yeah.
mean,
They
how
were.
were they?
So my husband has been incredible through this entire process, like anticipating what I need, saying and doing the right things. Like I couldn't ask for a better partner in this. And also, I think like especially because he's experiencing it too, right? Like it might be my body, but it's also his genetic material, right? It's also our future child or a lack thereof, but he's still like prioritizing me. Um, he was incredible. Thank God my parents were there because I don't think I would have been able to function without them. They were amazing. Um, I have an incredibly supportive family. And I also have to say from the start, and I know that this isn't the case for everyone, but like I was very open with my aunts and uncles and grandparents and brother and my brother and my husband's siblings and everyone that we were doing IVF. So people knew. So I didn't have to like explain anything of like why I was upset. And no one said I got many inappropriate comments, but not from our inner
Not
circle.
from not from your people, not from your people,
Correct.
which is incredible.
I think like fortunately, unfortunately, my parents also had some fertility issues. They did not have to do IVF, but my brother and I are products of assisted reproduction. So my mom and dad also get it, right? Like they
Yeah.
might not have had the same exact journey that my husband and I have or having had, whatever, but they understand in a way that someone who didn't need help to grow their family could never, even with the best of intentions.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you make it through that? I mean, it sounds like you made it through that period because your family was so incredible. And then I guess what happened next? Like when were you given the green light to try again? And
Well, I'll just add,
were you ready? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I'll just add insult to injury. We're in Israel. I have family in Israel who I love and I'm very close with. Um, and I accidentally found out that one of my cousins, we're the same age, was pregnant. Um, you can be incredibly happy for someone and love them and wish them nothing but the best, and also be devastated for yourself at the same time.
Of course.
And that's what happened. Um, I had to remove myself from a lot of situations. Um, it almost like became funny at that point. It was like I was so devastated by everything for months now that it was kind of of course, like, of course this would happen. I'm like, obviously, I'm so happy for my cousin. It's like, it could have been anyone. And I'd been like, of course this happened to me. Like, why would anything be easy? Why would anything be good? Why did God do this to me? What did I do to deserve this? Like, it's not fair, right? So I get through the trip. I mean, besides all these things that happen, being in Israel is great. It was better than sitting at home crying in my bed, but it was really hard. All I wanted to do was like come home and do another retrieval. We made a plan. We come home. Um, I do stims again for another 2.5 weeks. We kind of changed my protocol a little bit. My doctor ups my meds even more. He's like, let's be aggressive. If you're in, like, I'm in, we're going to push it. I was like, great. I'm 100% in. Ends up that I have my retrieval Erev Shavuos.
You do these very like they're almost like timed specifically that they need to be all around Jewish holidays.
Right. It's like, let's pick times when I'm going to be around the most possible people,
Yeah.
family, friends, community events. Let's have something that could be deeply traumatic happen. So either you need to go and like hold it all together or not go and have people asking where you are.
Yep.
That's how I kind of like felt. Okay. So I have my retrieval Erev Shavuos. Thank God. Okay. I have to say, when I said earlier that my doctor was a mensch, this is one of the reasons that he's an incredible doctor. He came back early from his vacation to do my retrieval because he didn't want what happened last time to happen again. And he said, I know a high ovary is not an issue. I could do this in my sleep. I'm coming back. And by the
Wow.
way, if it's too high to do it the classic way, you can do an egg. It's not as common, but you can do an egg retrieval from your stomach laparoscopically. So I'll just transition and do that. But like, we're getting eggs from both ovaries. So he comes back
Wow.
from vacation. He does my egg retrieval. Thank God. It's really successful. I get 30 eggs. I don't even remember the exact attrition rate. And then some of them are mature and then some of them go to blast. And I end up with 5 embryos. I'm so happy. But remember, I got to test them for BRCA. So I knew I didn't really have 5 embryos. I wanted one that between the chromosomal that was both BRCA negative and chromosomally normal and compatible with life. So I was like, please, God, just let me have one. I just want one. Um, I end up having 3 that I can use for transfer.
Incredible.
I'm so
Incredible.
happy, so over the moon. I'm so thankful. I'm like, thank you, God. I also want to say, um, before this, when I'm like in my dark era, I am saying to myself, first of all, it's really hard for me to socialize. It's really hard for me to be around groups of people. It's really hard for me to go to shul and see all these pregnant women and little kids. And, Purim, there's a Purim carnival at the shul. Well, that's the last thing I want to do, right? Shavuos, there's a community barbecue. I don't want to go to that, right? So finally, God gave me something good. And another holiday doesn't have to be tainted by this experience.
Wow.
Um, I get 3 usable embryos. I'm so happy. We do a little bit more testing because we want to make sure that like my body is in the best shape for transfer, start some other meds, whatever. End up, I felt really strongly that I wanted my doctor to do the transfer. Ends up that based on my timeline and his timeline, we do the transfer Erev Rosh Hashanah. Okay.
God. I feel like it's like a joke already. I mean, like,
No, it's actually insane.
like
But
you couldn't pick like Labor Day or like a random Wednesday. It had to be like,
it's Erev Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so we go in. We don't tell. People knew that we had embryos, but we don't tell people that we're doing a transfer. We go in, we have a transfer, everything looked great. My body looked great. The embryo looked great. It was a healthy embryo. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah. My doctor, who I said I'm Jewish, is like literally giving me a Dvar Torah while he's transferring this embryo. We don't need to get into it, but like there's a lot of connections between fertility and Rosh Hashanah. And I'm thinking to myself, this is amazing. This is Bashar. Like this is going to happen. So I have the transfer Erev Rosh Hashanah. What's 10 days later? Erev Yom Kippur. That morning of Erev Yom Kippur, I go into the clinic. I get my blood drawn. I wait for the call. Now, if you get a call from your nurse, it probably means that you're pregnant. And if you get a call from your doctor, it means usually that you're not, because they're the ones to break the news to you. I got a call from my doctor about an hour and a half before Yom Kippur came in. I knew right away that because he was calling me, it didn't work. He tells me on Erev Yom Kippur, he's so sorry, that he knows that this is the worst possible time. He wished he had other news, whatever. He says and does all of the right things. As you can imagine, as you have learned from my story, I'm very emotionally stable and never cry. I'm obviously hysterical.
Meaning you're a normal human being who has been going through the intense range of
Yeah.
emotions about trying to build a family, and plus like all of the hormones running through your body. Like, so yes, you are all the things.
So I'm in bed crying. And remember, no one knows that we did a transfer, but it's also an hour and a half until Yom Kippur. And I'm like, I can't go to shul. I'm not leaving this bed. Like, I'm not, of course, who would? Like, and if people do, so much respect and so much power to them, but that's not me. So my husband calls my parents and we fill them in and, everyone's upset, whatever. Also, like, you have to remember when you're in the midst of this, obviously you so desperately want a child. And I so desperately wanted a child, but I so desperately wanted a child while also racing the clock against breast cancer. Right. So it's like, yes, I want this on an emotional level, but also medically, like I need to do this. I need to have children so I can stop having children.
Yeah.
So I'm like a mess. Obviously, I don't go to shul. My husband is very upset too. He decides to go to shul. My mom's like, "Do you want me to stay home with you?" And I said, "No, when you are pregnant or you think you're pregnant or whatever, like you can't take Xanax. It's not proved." Um, well, I wasn't pregnant and I knew I wasn't pregnant. And I said, "I know it's Yom Kippur, but I cannot function." So I ended up taking a Xanax every Yom Kippur and taking and sleeping. Um, the next day,
Hold on,
go
I
ahead.
just want to give a public service announcement just for a second. For everyone out there, Xanax and or other anxiety medicines are approved for later on in pregnancy,
Yes.
just to let you know. And also, there are different anti-anxiety medicines that are approved even through the IVF process and other processes. So, but specifically Xanax is what Brianna's talking about, and specifically in this time of a potential pregnancy, almost pregnancy, et cetera. So I just, that's my PSA for the moment. Okay, go ahead.
So whatever. So I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. It's obviously still Yom Kippur, still like an extension of like what feels like the worst day of my life. Little did I know it wasn't, but we'll get there. Um, my husband comes back from shul. I have amazing friends in this community, some with amazing, beautiful children who I love so much, and some who are unfortunately in our camp of trying to build their families. Um, I have a friend in the second camp of trying to build their families that had an egg retrieval, and they found out right before Yom Kippur that they didn't get any blasts. So her husband and my husband are talking to each other in shul, using each other as support. My husband comes home and tells me, I then decide that I'm going to walk over to her house because I needed to not be in my bed, but also be with someone who gets it. And we just sat and cried and cried and cried and cried. It was really therapeutic and also like the most painful thing ever. Um, okay, so that's Yom Kippur.
Brianna, I just have to say, I mean, look, we we're going to get to the end of the story, and I'll give a little spoiler and say that the end of the story does have a happy ending. And I'm just sitting here in this moment with you because I knew at this point I still didn't know you yet. This was still in 20 there no, this was late in
Oh,
2024 and we knew each
yeah,
I actually we did know each other already. I take that back.
yeah.
But I didn't know a lot of these details and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself you know, the juxtaposition, right, of the day of judgment. Yom Kippur is the day of judgment, and it is the day that we know, we read all of these different prayers of who will live, who will die, who will be created, and who will not be created. And it's just so heavy. The day itself is so heavy, and I'm so I'm so glad for you, even in the midst of that heaviness, that you had someone else to lean on, that the two of you could hold each other in the heavy. That is an absolutely incredible thing.
Like I'm sad that we both were where we were,
Of
but
course.
thank God we had each other. But I will say, like, finding out Erev Yom Kippur that the transfer didn't work to what you were saying felt like, why were we not going to be inscribed in the book of life with a child? Why were we not deemed um worthy to have this child? It like at first, like when we had this Arab um Rosh Hashanah, I was like I said, like it felt sure. Like, could you think of anything better to happen on the Yamim Noraim? Like the high holidays. Like I couldn't, right? So then it's like who will live and who will die? Well, the this embryo that we worked so hard to build didn't didn't live, right? So it's like all of these very intense emotions that I'm trying to work through both medically and also religiously. And I was like having a lot of trouble. And, throughout this process, like I said, like I was kind of withdrawing. Like I go to shul. Before this, I was going to shul every week. I was seeing my friends. I was, I love hearing the rabbi speak and like I slowly it became less and less and less. And I was becoming more and more withdrawn from the community and people and because it was just easier not to be there. And this happens and it kind of like cements the like, well, where's God in this whole thing, right? So so I can't get pregnant. Well, I'm going to have issues getting pregnant because of the PCOS. I come to terms with that. I have BRCA. Okay, well, you know, I fully understand that God has a plan for everything, but I also felt like I don't know what the English word is for this. I'm sorry, but like I was doing my hishtadlus by like doing all of the things that I needed to do to have a healthy baby, right? Like
That's the
I got
definition of
tested.
hishtadlus, doing all the things that you need to
Okay, I
do.
didn't
Yeah.
know if there was like a word that it
I'm sure
translated
there
to.
is, but we're going with that.
Okay, like I find these things out. I'm proactive. I asked to be tested for PCOS. I end up getting tested for BRCA. I'm in the midst of an emotional breakdown. I'm calling the fertility clinic. I'm taking the meds and I'm doing all these things and I'm meeting with a therapist and you know, I'm doing my job. And still, God decided that I wasn't going to be pregnant.
It is it it is beyond heavy. It is beyond heavy. There are right, we can do all of the things, all of the right things. We can check all the boxes, take all the right medicines, see all the right doctors, do all the right things, pray the right way, dress the right way, eat the right foods, do all the right things. And still, like, there is no, it just doesn't work like that. And that's the problem, right? It's not like when you study for a test, if you study hard enough, you're going to get an A. It just doesn't work like that. And I was going to ask you also in the midst of this, like, were you seeing a therapist? What were you involved in other support? Because even beyond having a supportive family or the friend that you could cry with, like, you need more. Like, we all need more because it's just too much. It's just too heavy.
So I did start seeing a therapist who specializes in infertility trauma. She herself has two IVF miracle children, um, experienced her own journey to building her family. So besides the fact that she's a trained therapist, she also gets it from personal experience. And we will get to the end of the story. And it has, thank God, a happy ending. But, you know, I'm still seeing her all the time, right? Like, she's a regular thing on my calendar. Um, because I could not have gone through this without her. Yes, without the support of my husband and my parents and my friends and my doctor and the meds. But without therapy, I would have continued to be a shell of a human. And it's really hard to pick up the phone and like actually find a therapist and go to your first therapy session. It's really hard. But I'm so thankful that I did, because it really transformed the way that I move through this season of life. And I have to say, and I also know that medication is not for everyone. Um, and that is totally okay. But she referred me to a psychiatrist who also specializes in perinatal care. And I ended up starting to take Zoloft, which is approved for pregnancy. And the combination of like the help from the meds and therapy was an absolute game changer for me. Maybe not for everyone else, but for me, that allowed me to function like a human being in like some of the darkest times of my life. Um,
It
yeah,
is, yeah. I'm so glad. I assume that based on the fact when you said I took a Xanax, like most people, unless they're under the care of a reproductive psychiatrist, don't necessarily have Xanax laying around. So
right,
it clicked in my brain of like, there must be something else here. And I will say also, even for myself, I had a bottle of Xanax and a reproductive psychiatrist who gave me that bottle and a therapist during my whole stuff because I was not functioning. I was not functioning.
right.
No.
So all this is happening to me, and just like the back of my head is always like cancer, 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 right? So I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this for over a year now. All that's happening is I don't have a baby. And every day I'm closer and closer to, God forbid, being diagnosed with breast cancer. S-
So what happened next?
Okay. So that's Yom Kippur. Um, Meeting with my therapist, taking my medication, figuring out how to function. That's like my full-time job, figuring out how to function. I desperately wanted to roll in to the next transfer cycle because I had 3 embryos. I go in for what's called baseline blood work, where they just like make sure that everything in your system is where it's supposed to be and all of your hormone levels are where they're supposed to be. And I don't even know what they're supposed to be. They just tell you if they're correct or not. I did not go to med school. I feel like I could be a reproductive endocrinologist now. Just kidding. That's really hard. And I could never do that. But I know a lot more than I thought I would ever know. Um, I go in. I'm like, okay, it didn't work. That means that my HCG, which is basically the hormone that tells you if you're pregnant, is 0. Nothing else has really changed. So I'll go to my baseline. They'll tell me all looks good and I'll start the transfer prep. I'll start taking estrogen and I'll start taking the progesterone and do more shots. And like, okay, I did it once. I can do it again because this is what I want to do. Um, Yom Kippur. Okay. So I then get a call again from my reproductive endocrinologist, and he says, "Hi."
And again, it's the doctor calling, not the nurse.
The
So you knew.
doctor.
Okay, keep going.
He says, "Hi, there's something weird in your blood." And I was like, "Great, I have blood cancer. Awesome."
God.
I'm like, "Oh," and he's like, "Your HCG is rising." And that's all I wanted to hear Erev Yom Kippur, right? That's all I wanted to hear. He says, "Your HCG is rising, but don't get excited because it's too low to be viable. It's been too long since you would have had a positive pregnancy test. I think it's either a chemical pregnancy or ectopic, but I think it's a chemical pregnancy." Um, Chemical pregnancy, for people that don't know, is basically a very early miscarriage. Most people don't even know they're having chemical pregnancies. I had this been a chemical, women who are doing fertility treatments tend to know they're having one because you get a blood test 10 to 12 days after your procedure of whatever it is. Otherwise, you would probably never know. You might think it was your period. Um, I'm like, okay. He's like, it's probably a chemical pregnancy. The embryo probably implanted late. Um, let's monitor you. But if it's a chemical pregnancy, which I think it is, not ectopic, um, it will pass. And then when your HCG is at 0, we can prep you for the next round. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, here we go again. Well, what comes after Yom Kippur? Sickness. So I'm going to the doctor and
Hold on, I'm just gonna stop you just for 1 second. The only thing in my mind right now, I mean, just because I'm being a little bit facetious, is because I'm thinking to myself, okay, Sukkot is an 8-day holiday approximately. I'm like, and after that, there are no holidays until Chanukah. So I feel like we're clear from a
it's like the
fertility.
craziest. Yeah.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just had to. Keep going.
It's like almost, it's like funny. It is funny.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like devastatingly funny. So I'm going to get monitored, and I keep getting calls from my nurse that like my HCG doubled. Now remember, it was too low to be viable, and I wanted it to go to 0. So it went from like 33 to 66 to like 140 to like 3 whatever, right? And I keep going, and it keeps doubling, and it keeps doubling. So, I have friends that are amazing, and I do not hold this against them at all. But I'm like so stressed out that it's doubling, and I'm getting further and further away from this chemical pregnancy ding. Um, it's about to be Sukkot. And my friends are like, "But isn't this what you wanted? Like, are you sure you're not pregnant?"
Oh
And I'm
God,
like,
right.
"No, I'm not pregnant." Like, I'm just like exhausted emotionally and physically, and all of this started at Purim and like whatever. I'm like, I can't handle this. So as each blood test comes back, it's becoming more and more likely that it's ectopic, even though we thought that it was chemical. Um, the doctor says it's like it's Erev Sukkot. It's the first days of Chag. And the doctor says if you experience this specific kind of pain that's indicative of an ectopic, you should go to the ER. Otherwise, come to the office during Chol Moed, and we will do an ultrasound. And if it is confirmed ectopic, we can give you what's called, if it hasn't ruptured, if it ruptures, you need surgery. And if it hasn't ruptured, we can give you the first dose of the methotrexate shot, which is a form of chemo that is also used in 2 doses to basically dissolve an ectopic pregnancy. I'm like, okay, hopefully I can I'm like, okay, so I'll go during Chol Moed, whatever. Of
Hol Moed,
course.
the middle days of the holiday. So basically, like Sukkot is an 8-day holiday. So the first 2 days and last 2 days are more Chag. They're more the more like holy days of the holiday, and then the middle days, like day 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, 3, 4, 5. I'm like losing
Yeah.
track of my numbers here. Are the middle days, the Chol Moed days? Okay, go ahead.
So it's Chag, it's the first days, and I get the specific pain that they describe that's like indicative of an ectopic. I think it's like pain on your left side with some like a specific pain that you would think would have nothing to do with your reproductive organs, but like is very indicative of an ectopic. So I say to my husband, we're supposed to go to my parents that night for Sukkot, and my brother and his family are in from Israel. Okay. Um, I say, I'm having this pain. I don't know if it's just like in my head or if it's real. And he says, like, we need to go to the ER. So we go to the ER. Surprise, surprise, it's real. They confirm that it's ectopic. Um, I'm there for hours and hours and hours. I end up getting the first dose of methotrexate. Um, you then have to, I can't remember if it's 24 or 48 hours. Like there's a very specific time frame that you have to get the second dose. I'm pretty sure it was 24 hours because it was still Hog and I had to go to the clinic to get the second dose. Which like obviously I was like very uncomfortable about, but like you do what you have to do. And, you know, I like didn't want people, not because people in my community are judgmental, they're not. But I felt weird, like being in the car, driving to the clinic while people are walking to shul and seeing me, and like they don't know what I'm going through, and they might just think, "Oh, well, she's driving on Hog." When really, that's like, yes, technically I am, but that's not the case.
To be clear for everyone out there who doesn't understand about us, understand the gravity of an ectopic pregnancy. So an ectopic pregnancy is where the pregnancy doesn't implant in the uterus. It implants in someplace else. Sometimes it's the fallopian tube, sometimes it's other places in your abdomen. And when it implants someplace else, it's dangerous. It's life-threatening dangerous. And so you have to either get it taken out, so to speak, or have it dissolved by these medicines, or if it's already potentially ruptured, like sometimes it implants in your fallopian tube, and these tubes are like really, really, really tiny. You can imagine like, this thing in a little tube, like it starts out as a marble and eventually it starts to grow, and then if the tube ends up rupturing because that marble grows, that's a life-threatening emergency. And so that's when you would need surgery. So like needing to go to the doctor's office to get the second shot, even though it's Chag, is 100% allowed in Judaism because Judaism is all about protecting life. And so we would never do anything. If there's any chance there's any kind of threat to life, you always seek out medical attention no matter what day of the week it is and what kind of holiday it is.
So I knew that I was doing the right thing, but the people that are walking to shul don't know what's going on. So that's like another level of like,
Yep.
I want to duck, but that's ridiculous. People know my car. Like I live here. I grew up here. People know my car because this is my neighborhood. It's just like everything compounding.
Yep.
Um, I get the second shot. I have to keep going for blood work because we actually have to trace the HCG down to 0 because if it doesn't go to 0, it means that the methotrexate didn't work and there has to be surgical intervention. Thank God it worked. Um, I obviously have up until that point had experienced a lot of trauma. Um, and this was like the icing on the cake. I was meeting with my therapist. I was doing all the things I needed to do, and still there was no baby. I Then we can turn to like the story kind of takes a turn. Um, we don't do another transfer until November. Yeah, November. So it's actually not that long after. It's like 6 weeks later. Um, we do another transfer. We don't tell anyone because I'm like, I can't, after everything that we've experienced, like I just need to do this and I need to do it quietly because if it doesn't work again, I'm gonna be even less okay. And like I need to protect myself. So we don't tell anyone, not a soul. Um, we do it. 10 days after the transfer is Hanukkah. I get a phone call from my doctor.
I made a joke and said, the next thing had to be Hanukkah, but here we are. Okay, keep going.
I get a phone call from my doctor. And I'm like, it's my doctor. It didn't work.
I'm like, I'm actually starting to like shake at the moment.
He called me to wish me a congratulations
Oh
that I
gosh.
was in fact pregnant. I'm like gonna cry talking about it. I remember I was sitting in the basement, the room that I'm in right now, with my husband because I came back from getting my blood checked. I just didn't want to be alone. Like I was too like scared and excited and like worked up. So like I'm sitting on the couch. His desk is right behind me. He's sitting at his desk working, trying to distract himself. And I get the phone call and I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't hear you. So I like had him repeat it. And I'm like, you're telling me I'm pregnant. And he was like, yes, you're pregnant. I'm overjoyed. And I really want to focus on the fact of like, I was so thankful and so happy. This is all that I wanted. And at the same time, I was so scared. So, so, so scared because prior to the ectopic, it was a binary, right? It worked or it didn't work. The fact that I had an ectopic completely broke that for me. And it was like, well, you're kind of pregnant, but that doesn't equal a baby, right? So I was pregnant, but I didn't know that that was going to equal a baby. So I was like, I wanted to like be so happy and rejoice. And I did, but I was also like really scared. Um, yeah,
I think that, you know, for the regular world, for the people who don't go through a journey to get to that point, I think it's just, pregnancy, getting pregnant just is this like it's just like another thing that happens to them. Like,
right.
like with everybody for things that have gone smoothly. It's just another it's like, oh, we tried and we wanted to get pregnant in the summer and we got pregnant and then, we 9 months later we popped out a baby and then we wanted to have another baby in the summer, so then we try to get like for some people they don't have to go through all of these trials and tribulations. They just get pregnant when they want. And those pregnancies are good ones and they end up with healthy babies and like and nobody blinks an eye. And then for the rest of us, and I'm including myself obviously in that rest of us category, like it's so like bound up in so much trauma and like failure and grief and all of the pieces that like it's hard to like completely push that away when you get good news. Like it's like impossible.
Yeah. So I was like living with this duality of like so thankful, so excited, so grateful, both like to science and to God and but also so, so, so scared. Um, we didn't tell people for a really long time because I was like, I felt like if I verbalized it, something was going to happen.
Of course.
And then I would have to go
Which is
back to
ridiculous.
everyone.
I hold on. I said of course, meaning that like of course that's not rational, and of course also it's the way we think. Like
Right,
it's like I just want to hold this close because if I hold it and not everyone knows, then maybe there what like yeah.
right, right. And the truth was like, people in my life knew that I was doing IVF. People I was friends with, my family, random people, like I post about it on social media. Like nothing about our fertility journey was a secret at all. Why we were doing it, that we were doing it, like so, so open about it. But I couldn't be open about this. It was like, I had some block. Like I would say like, okay, I'm now 18 weeks. I really need to tell work, right? I was wearing like big clothes and I was like, and like I'm working with my therapist literally about like practicing telling people that I'm pregnant. And and I kept coming up with excuses. I'd be like, well, I'm going to tell work on Monday. And they'd be like, oh, wait, I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday. I'm going to wait until after the doctor's appointment just to make sure everything's okay. And then I can do it. Right. So I'm doing this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and coming up with excuses for not telling people. There are for sure people that are like in my life that like don't know that I was ever pregnant or had a baby. Right. Like I never posted on social media that I was pregnant. One, because I was scared, but two, like as someone in this world scrolling on social media and seeing a pregnancy announcement is the most painful thing. And I never wanted to be the cause of someone's pain. So I ultimately decided this is like a personal thing. Like it doesn't need to be on Instagram, Facebook. The people that need to know will know. And the random person that I went to college with that I haven't spoken to in however many years since I was in college, it's okay. They don't need to know. They can hear it from someone else, a mutual friend. It's okay. So there was that. And thank God in July, we welcomed our son. I never posted about him being born either because one, like people that needed to know knew. But also, if you didn't even know I was pregnant, I'm not going to randomly post that there's a baby. That like doesn't make sense. But also, in the same vein of like pregnancy announcements being painful, so are birth announcements. And I have been the person scrolling and seeing these and it being so painful that like I didn't want to put that out there. And I love my son and he's the best thing that's ever happened to me, but it's the best thing that's happened to me. It could be a really painful thing to someone else. So I just didn't want to put that out there. So it's interesting is like people that I have no connection to, that friends from college, camp, whatever, know I went through IVF because I was so open with it, but don't know the end of the story.
I mean, I totally understand that, and that makes perfect sense because and everybody makes their own choices in regard to that. Some people feel like, right, they feel like I went through all of this and I just need to like get those congratulations from all the people because I like couldn't do it for so long and like didn't whatever. But everybody makes their own decision, and I think the way you described your rationale, I think is just really beautiful, really beautiful. I, I'm wondering, just like as we're kind of like wrapping up here, and you've been so like you've shared so many pieces about your emotional state, about your relationship to God, about your family, about your friends, about how people were so supportive and so amazing, and all of that. I'm wondering though, you did here and there, but I'm wondering though, were there ever times that felt like that people or there were situations that felt that were not sensitive, that were not
Oh,
that people
absolutely.
I'm specifically asking that not so we can shame people, but more so that the people who are listening here can learn what not to do when someone in your life is going through even a tiny piece of what you've went through.
So there's a few things that come to mind. One of them is just like, when people found out that we were doing IVF, whether it be for like whether they knew it was for genetic reasons or not, they'd say like, "Wow!" Like I'd get an Instagram message, "Wow! Like you're so brave, you're so strong. Like I don't think I could ever do that. I don't want to be doing it, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not fun. I'm not doing it to like prove a point. Like I have to do it, right? Like I know that you think you're giving me a compliment, and like on one hand, I can appreciate the sentiment, but like this sucks. So,
Totally.
like, find a different way to say it. Like, don't, I don't know. And maybe other people won't resonate with that, but like, that like really would bother me. But like, something that happened is I think it was like between the failed cycle. I don't even know. I was like in an emotionally raw state. I actually got myself to shul. I was wearing a new dress that I really liked. I like bought myself a lot of things to make myself feel better. And one of them was this dress. And I'm standing in shul, and this older woman looks at me. She points at me, and she does that like, for people that can't see this, she does that like motion with her hand where like you make a round stomach
Oh God. Oh God.
and then like shrugs like are you pregnant? No, I wasn't pregnant. I ran to the bathroom and sobbed. Um like I was like, this is what I got for trying to come to shul. I haven't worn that dress since, even though like I did get pregnant and have a child. It's like this dress just like represents trauma, I guess, which is really a shame because I loved that dress. I just like haven't been able to put it on my body, but like that was so painful. And I know other people that have had similar or the same um experience. And also just like people saying like, new, when are you gonna have children? You've been married for 2 years now. You've been married for 2.5 years now. I don't know. If I knew, I would let you know. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer.
I wish that I mean, I could talk for hours about those two topics, but I just wish that people would, like, almost hear themselves when these things come out of their mouths. Like, when you say to someone, "When are you going to have kids?" As if they've been holding back until now, and by you saying that to them, they're like, "Oh, you know what? That's a good idea. We weren't thinking about it. So, like, thanks for reminding me that I've been married for 2.5 years." I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll get started on that like later today. You want to come?" Like, I mean, like when people say these things, like they're not thinking. Also, the same like when people look and assess, look at your body and assess how round your stomach is. Like, what happened to? Oh, by the way, being on fertility drugs actually makes you bloated and makes you look like you're pregnant when you are very much not pregnant. That's number one.
Like
What
the
about all the
opposite of
people?
pregnant.
Correct. Totally the opposite of pregnant. What about all the people who carry weight in their stomachs? What about all the people that are on other kinds of medicines for other kinds of horrific diseases that make them gain weight, maybe in their stomach, maybe not? And by you pointing it out to them makes them feel bad and makes them feel like a million ways of awful. What about like I mean, I could go. All right.
It's
I'm
just
not
like,
going to continue, but yeah.
yeah, it's just like crazy. Like, I would never comment on anyone's body. And even before I was going through all this, I would never comment on anyone's body. And like more so now, like, would I never, ever, ever comment on anyone's body? So those are like a few things. And I would just say, like, I mentioned that I live in a modern Orthodox community and it's a really wonderful, warm community, but it's really hard to be like the married couple without children, especially in whatever flavor of orthodoxy you are from. And I can't speak about conservative and reform communities in that way. Um, but I'm sure it's a lived experience for people in those communities too. Like, life is built around Jewish communal life is built around families and babies and children and Purim carnivals or like young families, um, pre-Shabbos pizza party at the park.
Yeah.
Well, my husband and I didn't go to those things, but those people were our friends, but they had children and we didn't, right? Or things like Kol Ne'arim on Simchas Torah, right? Where in Orthodox shuls, the fathers hold a tallis for an aliyah and all the children go up, right? Well, we're in shul for davening. but my husband didn't have a kid to stand under the tallest, right? Um, and it's not to say that these things shouldn't happen, because they should.
Or of course. Of course.
They should absolutely happen, but those shouldn't be the only things happening. So we were like kind of in this like middle ground of like, technically, like these young families are our people, quote unquote, our friends. They are our friends, but we didn't really fit in with that. But we also don't fit in with like older people who like don't have kids at home and aren't going to these things, because those people are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. So it was kind of like in this middle ground of like a really hard place to be. I just want to give like a lot of credit to my rabbis. Um, Not this past Simchas Torah, but the Simchas Torah before that, where I had my ectopic. I had just taken the meds to pass my ectopic. I didn't go to shul. My husband did. It was very hard for him. He came home and, I was like, don't go to shul, don't go to shul. He was like, I'm going to go to shul. He came home after, davening, and it was very, very difficult for him. Um, Kol Na'arim and Simchas Torah is just a holiday, very kid-centric. And like the rabbis knew what we were going through. We'd been open with them, and I think they saw him and they saw how painful it was. And this year, they kind of consulted with me. I've kind of become the like unofficial infertility consultant, which I'm honored to do. Um, you know, they made a point of like saying a tefillah, saying a prayer before Kol Na'arim, like with four people trying to build their family, or their families don't look the way they want it to be, or to give people, have a fulfilling year of what they needed. Um, but they wanted to do it in a way that felt good for the people that needed to hear it. And they said, like, should we do it during Kol Na'arim, like when all these kids are on the bima, or is that painful, right? Or does it feel like there's a spotlight? And then people are saying, well, who's not on the bima? Like, is there a spotlight? Like we had this conversation of like when the best time to do it. And they wanted to hear from me based on, because I had been open about my story. Um, and they wanted to do it in the best possible way. So I do want to give them a lot of credit. And I hope that other rabbis are doing things like that.
It's one of the things, as I was supposed to have a baby board member, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot around that time of year, that it bringing in that message of support and acknowledgement for the people whose families still don't look the way that they hoped and dreamed it makes a lot of difference in terms of the way people experience this like crazy holiday of merriment and kids and all of that. So absolutely. Absolutely. Briana, I cannot thank you enough for being so open and sharing so much of the dark and the deep and the difficult, and like the way you got here to this place. I I'm so grateful. And if you'll allow me one final question, just to lighten up the mood a little bit, because you referenced it in one of the things you just said when you were talking about like the woman who mentioned to you about how like, she was like pointing at your stomach and blah, blah. Um, you said, I did a lot of things, like I bought myself a lot of things to make myself feel better during this time. I'm curious, like, what were the things for you? Like, what did you buy yourself? Like, what were your favorite things? Like, I like to ask this because I always feel like people, like everybody gets ideas. Like people are like, oh, self-care, manicure, go take a walk in the woods, whatever. But like that doesn't necessarily do it for everyone. So I'm just curious, like, what does it or what did it for you? Also, like, what were some of maybe like your go-to things, like podcasts, foods, like just like what were some of your things that helped you?
So maybe other people are more financially responsible than I am, but I kind of just like went on a shopping spree and I was like, I need all of the dopamine hits that I can get. And then I started getting like tons of like targeted ads and like I was Anthropologie's like number one customer. It's like, well, if I'm not pregnant, I'm just gonna wear any clothes that I want. I like this dress, I'm gonna buy it. Click. Um, didn't even know I liked that style, but I got an ad for it. Click. And I was eating, I was like, if I'm not pregnant, I'm gonna eat sushi. I'm gonna eat as much sushi as I want. I'm gonna drink wine. I'm gonna eat sushi and drink a glass of wine. And I was like, because when I'm pregnant, and I said when, not if, I said when I'm pregnant, I won't be able to do this. Not that it made it okay that I wasn't pregnant, but I was just like, I'm going to have sushi as much as I want. And no one can say anything to me about ordering sushi for the third night in a row because I'll just say, well, I just had an ectopic pregnancy. And then they can't say anything to me.
Yep. Look, this is what we need to do. We all have our things. Like for me, it's the gooey chocolate babka, and for you, it's the sushi. Like we each have our things, and it's the things that keep us sane, and we have to
Yep.
do it because this is so difficult and dark and like all encompassing. It just feels so heavy that there have to be spaces of lightness and goodness. So okay, Brianna, I thank you. Thank you for opening
Thank
up. I know,
you.
like, from the BRCA standpoint, from the IVF standpoint, from the ectopic standpoint, from all of the standpoints, from the mental health standpoint, like, there were so many pieces here that I know people really need to hear, and I'm just grateful, very grateful.
Thank you. I'm, again, like really honored that I could share all of this.